Hi, Yvonne.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining me today for us to talk about your experiences in supporting clubs to succeed. So do you want to just tell everybody who you are and what your role is, who you work for?
Yep, sure. So I'm Yvonne Stead. I am the Club Development Officer for Swim England London.
Fantastic. How long have you been doing that role?
I have just literally swapped. So I was working nationally. So I was employed by Swim England to work in the London region as Club Development Officer. But then with the restructure from the 1st of August, I've been working for London to carry on what I was doing before.
Cool. Yep. Okay. Brilliant. So today you've joined us to talk about one of your best practice examples of club support and development. So can you just give us a bit of background about the club that you might be talking about today?
The club is, I'd say it's one of our medium-sized clubs in London. We have, various sizes as you do in any kind of clubs, if that makes sense. So we have a medium-sized club. They are just very proactive. Anything that we put out to them, they're just so engaging. It's fantastic. So if we put a new initiative out, they bite our hands off straight away, which is what you want to hear. They do like to ask questions as well, which I love, because that shows that they are taking it, quite literally and just want to hear more about the details. So yeah, that's one of the clubs.
Fantastic. So how did you first engage with them on this particular project that you've been working with them on?
I would say it started before COVID, so before the lockdown. I send out weekly updates to my clubs, and then also I said my club, sorry, then our clubs, they're not just mine. Get a bit protected. I send a weekly newsletter out to the clubs and try and give them as much information as possible on a weekly basis, various things that are changing. And it started off with those where they were actually coming back and actually trying to engage. And then if I ever put any initiatives out, they would be the first ones in. So that's how it really started, was just those initial communications. And then from there, it's just flourished into where the chair is now one of our chair of chairs of the Chairs Forum for London, as I like to call them, the chair of chairs. So I have three.
That's not easy to say.
I'm a chair of chairs. So they are anything and everything. This club is actively engaged. Can't fault them at all.
Great to hear how positive this club is, and that been quite easy to engage with. How have you developed a relationship that means that you're able to effectively work with them?
I'd say I'm able to pick up the phone if I have any questions. I think so. I really do believe in that. It's that personable relationship with myself and the chair. I have that with a lot of chairs around London, where I can just pick up the phone or their secretaries, because it's a two-way thing, and I really do believe that. The chair has offered to, we've just done a case study on the Chairs Forum as an example, and they've written a testimonial for me for that, as has another chair. And it's them being honest as well. Do you know what I mean? If they have any feedback, I always encourage it. If they've got something that they want to feedback on, please do. So yeah, it's a two-way thing, which I really do believe in.
Did you speak to them regularly then? How often?
Yeah, I'd say spoken today on email, spoke to her on the phone end of last week. Yeah, quite a bit, but I do that with a lot of the clubs. It's not just a club. I have 111.
That's your approach.
That's how I work. Yeah. They know they can pick up the phone, and I always say that, if they need to talk something through, just please pick up the phone, because things can get lost in translation in emails sometimes. So if they have any guidance queries or anything, then just pick up the phone. Really do believe that.
So you make sure that comms is followed through all the way.
Yeah.
So what have you worked with the club? What's kind of been the club development process? What have they achieved?
I think they're more, in this club is very self-sufficient, if that makes sense. So it started off with the swim mark process, which is, formerly Club Mark, which is our version of Club Mark, I should say. So it started off with that process. That's how I got to know them quite well. You could tell just by their submissions that they were very well organized. They didn't need a lot of input, if that makes sense. You will come to me with questions on stuff, but they are very self-sufficient. They don't need a lot of input. You do have other clubs that need an awful lot more hand-holding, but in that instance, there are a number of them like that in London, but they don't need a lot of hand holding. Yeah, they are self-sufficient. It's how you want clubs to be. They come to you when they need you. Yeah.
Yeah. And has that always been the case, or have you helped them to be more self-sufficient?
In that instance, with that club, I would say they've always been like that. You have another club which has become more so, but I wouldn't say it's just down to me, because there's other colleagues, you know what I mean, that I always go to if I have any queries about anything, because I am not the one-stop shop for information. You know, there are colleagues that know better than I do, but I do feel that if you're able to give them the information that they need, then they will take that, and then they will flourish themselves, because they feel they come back to you with, you know, like I've had an email this week about an insurance question, got them an answer very quickly, gone back, and that's helped them continue negotiations with a, you know, a key partner going forward. So, you know, it's things like that, isn't it? It's being the middleman in some cases, but then being effective with that.
Yeah. And how are you effective with that?
I try to be quick on my emails. I try to get back to them quickly. If I can't, because, you know, at the moment colleagues are on furlough, as an example, it's just reiterating that, you know, when I hear something, I will get back to you. So I do try to. I mean, I had an example last week where one of the clubs phoned up and said, Yvonne, it wasn't like you not to respond for 4 hours. We were getting worried. I was like, really? I had meetings all day, love. Said normally you get back quite quick. I went, yeah, but in this instance I was in all day meetings, so please, you know, don't worry, I am in the building, don't worry. Because
I love that they were more worried about you than you getting back to them about the query. That's brilliant. That just
made me chuckle no end last week. I put a smile on my face on a Friday. Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
So with that whole basis that you kind of clearly are really strong in relationships with your clubs and how you work with those clubs, how has that helped through COVID?
I'd actually say it's amplified what we're doing. We didn't have a chairs forum in London. It collapsed a couple of years ago. One of the chairs approached me and said, Yvonne, I think we need a chairs forum. I was like, fine. I went away, sold it to my bosses. They then sold it to the board. They then came back and approved it. And then from there, we just have an amazing setup. Absolutely amazing. It is. The 3 chairs rotate the chairship. They have complete ownership. I just do the admin for them. They choose the topics, because I have a pre-meet with them every week just to make sure that they know how many are on. If we do breakout rooms, if we just do group discussions, you know, depending on how many we've got on in the evening. And it just works. It's really, it's how it should be. Yeah, it's them owning the process, and that's how you want them to be. Yeah, we're there to support and guide, and that's, you know, fundamentally our job, and that is a proven case of that.
And you are obviously somebody who has done the Supporting Clubs to Succeed CPD opportunity. What have been some of your reflections or learnings or things that you're applying in your role now?
Interestingly, how my emails communicate. So I try to make them, I'm very formal in my emails, but I've made them a bit more personable as well in there. So I always say lovely to hear from you at the start of my emails. Now, you know, thanks for your email, lovely to hear from you. And maybe a bit too personable, but I do try to, you know, just try and make it a little bit more than the formalized, and also reflecting how I work with the clubs, what works, what hasn't worked, and definitely looking at the 360 evaluation. So yeah, looking at that one. Yeah,
fantastic, thank you. What do you think is a real critical success factors for how you effectively support clubs?
I think it's as clubs always say, they, you know, they're volunteers. And I do believe, and this is the way that I always think of it, I'm very lucky to have the job that I have, because there's a lot of volunteers that wish that they had my job, if that makes sense. So I always go with that viewpoint that I'm lucky to be paid. They, bless them, give God knows how many hours a week and get very little acknowledgement for it. So if I can help just in a little teeny way to make their job that little bit easier, then that is what I'm here to do. So I always have that as an ethos in the back of my mind. Anything to make their job easier, I will do it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to the lovely Yvonne. That is brilliant, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy hearing all about that. Thank you.